Welcome back. Well, we're about to pull it all together by converting all our conversions all mixed together. So whether you start with a percent, a decimal, or a fraction, you have to be able to convert to the other two. So a couple of these conversions, like with the percentages, in our last lesson we went from a decimal to a percent and a fraction to a percent. So now we're just going to reverse the process to show how if you begin with a percent, how to go to a decimal or a fraction. So if you'll recall, we shifted the decimal to the right when we started with a decimal, but now we're starting with a percentage. So remember, this means 12 out of 100. So it makes sense that it's 0.12. So if you would like to write it that way, you can think of it like that. Or you could just shift the decimal 2 places to the left. Remember, I told you in the last video that the percentage is always larger than the decimal version. So if you get confused, just keep it straight like that. So see, this one is, it would be easiest just to think of it as shifting it 2 places, because this one would be 0.02 if you wrote it like this. And that's still kind of confusing to view. It's easiest just to shift, but just to show why it works, if I multiplied the top by 100 and the bottom by 100, you can see that I would get, I would end up getting 2 right here over 10,000, which that's what this decimal represents. It's 2 and it's in the 10,000ths place. But there's really no need to think about all of that when you can just shift the decimal. It's like you're dividing now by 100. So this is the kind right here. You might star. It always throws students off. They want to say, but this is already a decimal. Well, no, it's not. It's a percentage, because when you see the percent sign with it, you have a percentage. So you want to convert that to just a plain old number with no percent sign anymore. So you would shift it 2 places to the left, and that would give you 0.0045. No, I did that incorrectly. Sorry. Let me write this a little bit bigger. Right now I have 4.5%, so I'm going to shift it once and then one more time, so it's 0.045. Always kind of just double check myself. I move it back 2 places this way to make sure it equals the percentage. Okay, and when you see number 5, this one, there's really nothing to do over here. I put a fractional percent in there because that's one of the ones we're supposed to memorize. So if this were written out as a decimal, it would be 0.666666666 and so on, because this is, even though that's a terrible way to write a percentage with a repeating bar, but you can see why the whole thing, if you shift the decimal 2 places back, you get 0.6 repeating, which is, oh, what do we change? Oh, we're changing it to a decimal, so we would have to write 0.6 repeating. If I was writing it as a fraction, it would just been 2/3. So if you haven't been memorizing what's on that handout number 2, make sure you're backing up and doing that. So conversion number 6, starting with a percent and going to a fraction. Before we were trying, one of our methods, we were trying to force our fraction to have a denominator of 100. Well, if it's a percentage to start with, you can always just drop the percent sign if you divide by 100. And then, so it's already a fraction, we just need to simplify. So 7/50. So let's try number 6, and we'll use 2 different methods. So you can just always take what I wrote up here. You can just drop the percent sign and put it over 100. So if I do that, I'd have 35.2 over 100. But remember, I want a fraction. And right now, my fraction has a decimal inside of it, which is not a good thing. So if I want to get rid of that, I'm going to have to multiply the top by 10 and the bottom by 10. And you might be asking yourself, well, why did she pick 10? Well, I want that 35.2 to become a whole number. So the decimal needs to move one place, so that means multiply by 10. So I get 352 over 1,000 times, 100 times 10 is 1,000. Then I just have to simplify. So 4 goes into both of these. I'll kind of go over to the side, do a little scratch work there. I know the denominator, 4 goes into 125 times, so it goes into 1,250, and it goes into 352. Again, if you do a little scratch out to the side, you'll get 88. Now that makes it a little easier to see, oh, I can divide again. So by 2, you get 44 over 125. And 144 only has 1, 2, 22, and 44 as factors, none of which divide into 125. So there's my fraction. The alternative, which I think is a little easier, is to just shift the decimal. I'll write that here. Shift decimal. Let's get rid of that. Let's write it differently. Let's say convert the percent to a decimal. So you're going to change the percent to a decimal and then the decimal to a fraction, which is something we did at the beginning. So 35.2% is equivalent to 0.352. That's in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So it's 352 over 1,000. And then from there, you're right back where you were before. It's really just a matter of how you think of it. So this is still 44 over 125. So all that work you did in the fraction unit, learning how to simplify, still applies. You still need to know how to simplify. So there's one of our percentages that's greater than 100, 210%. So if it's, remember, 1 is 100%. So again, I could do it either way, but if we just shift it and change it to a decimal, this would be 2.10, which is the same as just 2.1. So there's that decimal version. Now we're going to a fraction. Well, this would be a mixed number. 2, whatever's in the front of the decimal is your whole, and you've got 1/10. 2 and 1/10. So on the next page, I gave you a little bit more of the format that you'll see on your homework. So you've got 3 columns. 1 column is filled in, and it's your job to fill in the other 2 columns. Sometimes there's work involved, sometimes there's not. On your homework, I put an asterisk by the problems where work was needed. So you might right now just want to kind of go off on your own, try to fill this in if you're feeling kind of confident, or fill in the parts you think you know, and then come back to the video. Or you could just proceed with me. So if you're starting with a decimal, we could fill in the fraction or the percent first. If I go to the percent, it's going to be 9.9%. Because I shifted the decimal 2 places to the right. For a fraction, I just look at my decimal at tenths, hundredths, thousandths. The 9 is in the thousandths. So that tells me my denominator, the numerator is 99, and I can't simplify it. So it's done. Number 3 and 4. So great, we're starting with a percentage. This is what we did in this lesson alone. So to get to a decimal, remember the decimal is always smaller than the percentage. So you're going to have to shift 2 to the left. So you get 0.6278. Done, no work. Now this one's a little tougher with the fraction part. We're going to have to do a little simplifying. But the 8 is in the 10,000ths place. So it's 6278 over 10,000. And then I just need to simplify. If I divide the numerator and denominator by 2, I get 5,000 here. And on top, if you do a little scratch work, you'll get 3139. Unfortunately for us, that one doesn't simplify. This would be a problem on your homework where I would have an asterisk, meaning work is needed. That I need to see this before you go to your final result. So now we're starting with a fraction. So the reason I didn't leave very much room on this one, or I left some room, sorry, this is this weird line right here. I could just start long division, but first I would convert it to a mixed number, because that goes 1 with 3 left over. And 3/5 is one of your decimal conversions that you're supposed to know. 1/5 is 0.2, 2/5 is 0.4, 3/5 is 0.6, so this is just 1.6. This is one where a little support is needed. Just, I would need to see this before you jumped to 1.6. Some people on this problem might have just automatically started with the long division, and that's fine too. Okay, they're still going to get there. It's just a little bit more work to get there that way. But if I did the division, you can see I'd get the same result, 1.6. So I really urge you to memorize the ones that you can, because it really does cut down on some work. So when I get to number 6, and I know that the 1 means my percentage is going to be over 100%. When you have it in this decimal form, you're just moving it 2 places to the right. So you have 1.6, 2 places to the right is going to give you 160%. And folks, that's about all there is to conversions. Good luck, and actually look back at your answers and make sure that they all make sense. And I'm out.